Now available for the first time in paperback. Why 70% of black women are single. Learn all the reasons why so many black women can't find a husband and why 70% of black women are single. Get your copy of Why 70% of Black Women Are Single on Amazon.com today.
I have a critical question to ask any of the followers of Black Lives Matter. Which black men are you protesting for? Now, the reason why I ask that question is because I've noticed a pattern as related to the kinds of black men that Black Lives Matter comes out here to march and protest for. Moreover, I've noticed a paradigm as related to who Black Lives Matter comes out here to march and protest for, and how that paradigm really shows how this is about promoting a certain narrative regarding black men, and who they classify as black men, when you really look at it, really fits within a racist narrative. Now, your Black Lives Matter, it seems like they only come out here to march and protest for certain black males who fit within a certain pattern of behavior and a certain profile as related to their behavior. Now, when it comes down to Black Lives Matter, they just don't come out here for the average, everyday, ordinary, working class brother. No, it seems like every black male they have come out here to march and protest for seems to fit a certain narrative as related to where their background and where they come from. Now, usually, many of the black males that Black Lives Matter comes out here and protest for usually come from these single mother households, and usually they come from these inner city neighborhoods. And oftentimes, these individuals that Black Lives Matter comes out to march and protest for usually have had some run-in with law enforcement, or they've had a run-in with one of these white suburban commandos like Ahmaud Arbery did. So it seems like Black Lives Matter only comes out for your black males who come from a single mother household, have had a run-in with a white law enforcement officer or a non-black law enforcement officer or a white suburban commando, and they wind up becoming killed by either that white suburban commando or by one of these white police officers. In any other case, we don't see your Black Lives Matter coming out here to protest, like in the case of all of the numerous black men and black women and black children who have been shot and killed by other black men. No, they don't come out for those black boys, black girls, and black men and women shot by other black people. And that just shows us how they only come out for a certain narrative for a certain group of black males. And these black males, usually once this incident happens, we get this story coming from Black Lives Matter and the mainstream media, which present us the idea that these black males who have been either shot and killed by the police, or they wind up shot and killed by one of these white suburban commandos, we get this picture going out here making these individuals into saints and making it look like they were so innocent in the incident where these individual black males wound up losing their lives. That's the picture we get presented in the first days of the incident when these black males are shot and killed by a white police officer, or they wind up getting shot and killed by these suburban commandos. The first story we get is of how good these black males are, and we get this story of how they are just practically presented as saints to everyone as related to their behavior. Now, when I take a critical examination of this depiction of your black males who are being protested for by Black Lives Matter, I notice how a correlation between that and the founders of Black Lives Matter, who were primarily these three alphabet women, and the followers of Black Lives Matter, who are primarily single mothers. Now, your single mother oftentimes has a narrative as related to her son, but in denying her dysfunction, and I went into this in my book, The Man Crisis, and what these women do is they deny that their son was culpable as to something when he gets into a run-in with the police. And usually what these women usually say is, my baby didn't hurt nobody, my baby was a good boy. Now, if we notice that and connect it, correlate it with what is presented as related to men like your Ahmaud Arbery, men like your Rayshard Brooks, men like your the guy who was shot in Wisconsin, Jacob Blake, what happens is we always get the story of how good these males were, how innocent these males were. And again, this is a repackaging of the my baby didn't hurt nobody, the single mother denying that her son has participated in some sort of behavior that led to him winding up in a run-in with the police. So when I look at the narrative as related to many of the black males who Black Lives Matter goes out here to protest for, I notice that many of these men, the reason why Black Lives Matter is going out here to protest for them is because it's these black single mothers going out here to protest, to fight for their son's life, so-called mattering. But when we look at the narrative they're presenting, it's just them trying to make these boys out to be something that they're not. They try to make it like these boys are so innocent, but they don't want to acknowledge that there had to be some sort of culpability in whatever happened to these men getting shot by the police in most of these cases. And because, again, they don't come out to show that Black Life Matters as related to black on black crime, nor do they come out to show Black Life Mattering as related to abortion. So when I look at your Black Lives Matter, it seems like, again, they only come out here to march and protest for certain black males, and it's mostly single mothers coming out here to protest for Pookie and Ray Ray. So Black Lives Matter is not really a movement about trying to show the value of overall black life. For me, it's looking more and more like a campaign to show us the value of the life of a Pookie and a Ray Ray. And the only reason why people are coming out for Black Lives Matter is to show how it matters to regarding the life of Pookie and Ray Ray. And it seems like when it comes down to your white leftists, this is also the same reason they come out to march and protest. They're marching and protesting for Pookie and Ray Ray because the only black men they acknowledge as being black men are Pookies and Ray Ray. So that's where I start to see some racism going on as related to the narrative of Black Lives Matter, because they again only come out to march and protest for certain black men who fit a certain political narrative and present certain approaches to life that make white leftists feel comfortable. So in order for their world to be smooth, they only come out here and protest for certain black men. And it seems like, again, the black single mother also comes out to march and protest only for certain black men. If these black men fit the pattern and profile that your white leftist and the black single mother feel comfortable with, then they come out here to march and protest, talking about Black Lives Matter, and then looking to go out here and participate in riots and violence because this is what they believe justifies them going out here. So basically, when I look at the critical picture of your Black Lives Matter and who they go out here to march and protest for, it is very telling and condemning of both of your Black Lives Matter's main groups, your white leftists and your black women and the beta male simp supporters, it seems like the only black male lives that matter to them are the lives of a Pookie and a Ray Ray. So they will come out here and march and protest for your Pookie and your Ray Ray. They will live in a world of denial about Pookie and Ray Ray, telling us how good these black males were. But once we start digging into their past, that's when we start to find out that this man who they want to canonize as a saint, we start to find out how much of a sinner he was and how he practically was terrorizing his community in some cases, just like the case of your Jacob Blake, where after finding out new information about Jacob Blake, this man was not somebody who everybody wants to go out here and present as a saint. This man was a completely dysfunctional individual and practically was one of these textbook beta males I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis. This Jacob Blake, originally the story was presented in the mainstream media, presenting him as some sort of saint looking to break up a fight. But when we find out the real deal about this Jacob Blake, we find out that he was one of these Pookies who was in a beef with his girlfriend or his baby mama, and he was looking to try to go see that baby mama, and he practically was making a bad situation worse by going over to visit this woman who wanted nothing to do with him. And he does this with 3 of his own children inside of a vehicle, showing us that this Pookie really didn't care about the safety or health of anyone. But again, the mainstream media practically reported it in the early stages of the story that, oh, this Jacob Blake was an innocent man, that he practically was this saint. But when we find out the truth, we find out that your Jacob Blake really was not the saint that they presented him to be. And again, your Black Lives Matter will always make it where these guys from these single mother households are these saints, because they're in denial about these black males, because in their mind, their baby can never hurt anybody, and their baby is such a good boy. So these single moms are in such denial about their sons, but they don't want to acknowledge how their sons, in some cases, and I say some, have culpability in the things that happen to them. And that whole thing really destroys Black Lives Matter's credibility, because you're sitting there going out here to march and protest for individuals like this Jacob Blake. Now, the shooting of Jacob Blake was, as I see it, excessive force. But when I look at the whole situation, that whole situation with Jacob Blake primarily was started because of a black woman calling 911, an old form of drama that has gone on in the black community for over 50 years. Usually, a lot of these black women will call 911 on a black man who is doing something they don't like, so simple as not leaving a seat of the toilet up. They'll call 911 on him, and that will lead to him possibly getting arrested. So we had that going on with Jacob Blake, and he had this encounter with the police, and we had people from Black Lives Matter ready to riot and tear up this Kenosha, Wisconsin, as related to that incident. And when that happened, it practically was the jump the shark moment for the Black Lives Matter movement, because now we know the truth about Black Lives Matter. We know that the Black Lives Matter movement is only about protesting for Pookies and Ray Rays. And now that the world knows that Black Lives Matter is not about protesting for getting black men justice under the law by punishing rogue police officers and race soldiers, we now know that Black Lives Matter is no longer a credible organization whatsoever as related to black issues. Moreover, we also know that the Black Lives Matter movement has been hijacked by white leftists, and these white leftists only see certain black males as black men, and they'll come out here to protest for Pookie and Ray Ray because Pookie and Ray Ray fit the narrative that they want to see regarding black men. They only want to see black male thugs, black male bad boys, black male hood boogers. These are the only black males they want to see, and these are the black males whose lives matter to them, because if you see a black male like this, he fits the narrative that makes the white leftist world smooth and makes the white leftist feel comfortable about their place in the world. So they'll come out here and protest for the black males who fit their narrative, but they're not really going to go out here and protest for actual Black Lives Mattering and actual justice for black men, because they aren't, both your black single mothers and your white leftists aren't interested in getting black men justice. They're not interested in creating a tangible for black male justice, and they don't really understand about trying to get actual justice for black men by going out here to not only punish these rogue police officers, but we also have to have a standard of law that punishes Pookies and Ray Rays for their continuing to be out of pocket and completely out of control behavior, because most of the Pookies and the Ray Rays, they are being enabled by both your black single mothers and your white leftists to continue participating in the riots and just crazy and out of control behavior that has taken over places like your Kenosha, Wisconsin, and many cities controlled by the left. We've had practically 90 days of rioting in places like Portland, and again, all enabling the dysfunctional behaviors of Pookies and Ray Rays and allowing them to practically run amok in these areas, showing us that the only lives that matter to the single mothers and the agenda of single moms from Black Lives Matter are the lives of Pookies and Ray Rays, and these lives don't matter that much because to them, these males are nothing more than fodder that they use to push their political agenda. For them, the caskets of Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and your Rayshard Brooks are nothing more than stepping stones to moving forward in recreating the extremely dysfunctional welfare state and the chaos of that welfare state that was established from the 1960s all the way up until about the 1990s or early 2000s. And that's what they want to recreate, is that welfare state. And that's why we're seeing all of this chaos going on in cities like New York here, because these people, they want to go back to that era, not understanding the chaos of that era. And these single moms, this is the era where they thrived and did well. And the economic system that they thrived under and did well was the welfare state. And they want to go back to that welfare state. And again, they want to use Pookie as cannon fodder to wage their war to go back to that welfare state. And many black people don't understand how they're being used as pawns in this political campaign, and how this political campaign is designed to try to get black people to get behind Black Lives Matter, an organization that shows how little it regards black male life, because the only black male life they come out to march and protest for are the lives of Pookies and Ray Rays who have been shot by white police officers or winding up getting shot by one of these white suburban commandos. They don't come out to deal with black on black crime. They don't come out here to deal with your abortion. They don't come out here to deal with real issues in the black community. They don't care about black life. All they care about is their agenda. And again, when you take a critical examination of the pattern and profile of many of the beta black males that they go out here to march and protest for, you clearly see that these black males only are being used as related to an agenda. And that's why black people have to understand that this Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization that runs counter to the black community, and that's why we have to push back against Black Lives Matter, because black life doesn't matter to Black Lives Matter. If you'd like to learn more about the dysfunctional pattern and profile of the beta male, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. And if you want to learn more about why these black females act in such a dysfunctional way, you can pick up my book, Why 70% of Black Women Are Single, in paperback and Kindle format. And you can also find The Man Crisis and Why 70% of Black Women Are Single on Google Play, Smashwords, and the iBookstore. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available for the first time on Google Play, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are falling apart in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy on Google Play today.